I know what you're thinking. Why am I holding this PC upside down? And what is the bucket for? Well, I messed up. Let me explain. Some of you might remember this PC build that I decided to try my first custom hard tubing on a budget. When I originally got this all set up, I tried to get this set up so that if I decided to upgrade later in the future, I can still swap out the graphics card. Well, I was wrong. Completely wrong. But it's alright, because now I get to do my first draining and I guess get some more practice on changing out these tubes. By the way, I'm upgrading from a RTX 3060 Ti to an RTX 3080 that I could not pass up. Thanks to one of my subscribers, I was able to get this for $300. It's in great condition. I also ended up taking this apart and painting this white to match the PC as much as possible. And since I had this all taken apart, I ended up repasting the thermal paste. It actually came out pretty good. Wish I could have painted more of the parts white, but this will do. While I was taking this apart, I noticed the color has changed since being on the PC for about 4 months. If anyone has more experience, can chime in and explain why the color would change so drastically. You'll notice the difference after I refill it. Also, there was really no reason for me to have this PC up in the air. It's actually much easier to just lay it down and drain it. Not sure why the tubes are all stained with the orange, but I'm gonna refill it with the same color just because I have a lot left of it. But I would definitely change the color next time I drain this, so I'll have to find out how to clean all those stains. I only had to redo 2 of these tubes, which is this top one and the main line going to the CPU. The main one will be easier out of the 2. The second smaller one will be tricky. The best way to figure this all out is to get the graphics card in to see where we can put this pump. I'm not gonna go too in depth on how to heat up and bend these tubes. I do explain it a little more in the first video I made. You can check that video out after. I'm not sure if there's a proper or better way to get these bends on point. I did have a bit of a hard time with the top one. I had to redo it twice. I kept trying to put this small bend on the top part to get it to line up with the fitting. It just didn't look right. So then I decided to move that small bend to the bottom and it came out so much better. I'm glad I gave it one more try on the bend. It definitely worked out. Here are some of the B-roll shots of the final build. Like I mentioned earlier, see the difference on how darker the fluid is compared to how it looked after 4 months. It's such a huge difference. I'm going to assume it's going to happen again. So if it does, what should be my next color? Let me know down in the comments. In between all this, I've had a lot going on. I got a custom order that came in. I was able to get 2 PC builds for flips. And also I sold 2 builds from the last video. Here's a quick update from the last video. The OKINOS PC sold first, which I was a bit surprised on how fast it did considering the almost non-RGB. The 5800X with the 3060 Ti build sold also. The person who bought the 3060 build actually gave me his old setup for free. He was having issues with it turning on. There was a few issues. One, the power switch from the case was damaged, so I tried jumping the 2 pins on the motherboard and it still wouldn't turn on. So I checked the power supply with my tester and it actually tested out fine. So here's the weird part. I decided to try it with a new power supply and the PC booted right up. Not really sure what's going on with this old power supply, but I'm glad I was able to get this to boot right up. I cleaned everything up because it was extremely dirty. I didn't even bother with the case or even the cooler. It was just too dirty. I ended up getting a new case and of course a power supply. The specs on this setup are an ASRock A320M, a Ryzen 5 2600, a 2x8GB kit of Alloy RAM, clocked at 3200 megahertz. I did put a new cooler since I have so many of these lying around. Also had this 512GB M.2 drive, which the PC came with a 500GB SSD, so 1TB in total for storage. The case is in a PVIA Eclipse and the graphics card is a Gigabyte GTX 1660. Since the PC was free, the whole build cost was $120. I did list it for $300, which it pretty much sold immediately. Before I go over the specs of the second PC flip, let's go over this custom order that came in through my website. I went with a different route with the GPU on this one. Their total budget is $800. They are coming from a PS5, so the type of games they play are Fortnite, The Last of Us, Stardew Valley, and Minecraft. Nothing crazy, a nice budget build. So the specs I went with were a Ryzen 5 5600, an MSI B550M VSD. Wi-Fi is a must, so I got the Wi-Fi version. A 2x8GB kit of Timetech Pinnacle conduit, 1TB of storage. For the CPU cooler, I went with a Vitro V5. For the PC case, they actually wanted the OKINOS Cypress 3 non-RGB. They really liked the first build I did with it, so they wanted that same look. For the GPU, it's actually been a while since I've gone AMD, and it's my first time with this one, but to fit their budget, I went with a RX 7600. For price to performance and budget builds, AMD is definitely the go-to in my opinion. Nvidia just sells better. Speaking of Nvidia GPUs, let's go over this second PC flip since I had upgraded to an RTX 3080. My old 3060 Ti was perfect for this flip. The specs on this build are a Gigabyte B550 Gaming X, a Ryzen 7 5800X. This is the last of the two that I got from the last video. A 2x8 GB kit of Timetech Pinnacle conduit. As most of you know, I give the option to upgrade to a 2x16 GB kit on the listing. For storage, a 1TB Kelvin Kraz M.2 drive, cooled down by a Thermalright King. It's crazy what this $20 CPU cooler does. For the PC case, I really like how the last pink build came out, so I decided to go with the Apivia Hydra in white. Glad I was able to put my old 3060 Ti in this to get the all white look. I want to give a quick shout out to Apivia. They've shared this build on their Instagram page. They've always been a great supporter and they always share my builds. So again, big shout outs to Apivia. After a few weeks of being posted, this build finally sold to someone in my local area. I will say, Facebook has been a bit weird lately. I did have to repost this build a few times. There's times a PC will sell fast, but then there's other times when I will have to repost, and as soon as I repost, it usually sells right away. Really strange. But also on top of that, the market right now has been slow lately. One of the last builds from the last video has been sitting for a lot longer than I would like it to. It's currently one of the last builds I have at the moment. I did drop the price a bit to see if I can get it to sell. I will say this, that $300 build did get a lot of attention, which I suspected. It was a lot of the usual, hey, is this still available messages, but the fact that I did get an extreme amount of messages kind of makes me think maybe I should start aiming under the $500 range for PC builds. This one of course was a rare example since I got the PC for free, but when I first started this channel, I did do more of the lower budget builds for flips. What do you guys think? Go back or at least have one or two $500-ish builds mixed in with my mid-range builds? Let me know down in the comments. I did also get this local PC dropped off that I had to troubleshoot. They said the PC would randomly go black screen, especially during gaming. These types of troubleshoots can be a bit tough to replicate since they said it's random, but luckily I was able to imitate the issue fairly quickly. As you can see, the screen goes black and then you get a VGA light on the motherboard while the PC is still on and running. First thing I did was make sure the drivers were up to date. I even went ahead and updated the BIOS since it was on an old BIOS. Even after that, it still gave me the same issue. I did test the card alone on two other test PCs and it still gave me the same issue. So something weird is going on with this RTX 3080. The customer did decide to go ahead and just upgrade the graphics card. We decided on an RTX 4070 Ti Super. Pretty much the only thing I can get my hands on that was in their budget. I did a quick run to make sure the PC was running great. And after about a week after giving the PC back, they were extremely happy and I'm glad I was able to get them back up and running. I'll let this one wrap up the video. I have a lot more coming up on the next one, so stay tuned in for that.